Hello, hello. Megan Thompson here with Megan Thompson Coaching. And today we are going to cover the important pieces that you might be missing in validation. So when your child is experiencing big emotions, explosive behaviors, and losing their mind at the drop of a hat, it can be very overwhelming for you as a parent. And you may be trying to apply a very key skill called validation. And if your child is struggling with accepting that skill and learning about their emotions, then you definitely need to tune into today's show. Here at MTC, we help parents break out of the meltdown cycle in as little as 8 weeks by supporting highly sensitive children and highly sensitive teens to avoid the yelling, kicking, screaming, melting down, throwing things, running away, slamming their doors, shutting down, isolating, and all of the other inappropriate negative behaviors. And we do that by teaching parents how to become the therapeutic change agent in their own homes. And this is critically important when you're raising a highly sensitive child, that you take ownership of the environment in the household and recognize that the meltdown cycle is a family dynamic cycle. This is not a problem that is solely relevant to your one single child, even if you're parenting an only child. All right, or there's massive age gaps between your kids or whatever, right? It's very important that you notice that everybody in the family plays a part to this problem. And if you are listening in, part of you already knows that. And let's go ahead and dive into one of the key components that many parents get stuck on, which is validation, right? So when your child is experiencing emotions, many times we hear parents talk about the challenges that you can be facing when your child is blowing up and hurting others or threatening to hurt themselves or hurt you. This is very scary, obviously, and it can make your mind wander, and you can also feel not just overwhelmed, but frustrated and stuck, right? And you can be wondering, does my child even need to be acknowledged in these emotions right now? Because they're so big, I don't even think that I agree with them. And this is point number one. Validation is not agreement. If your child is struggling with their emotions and you are demonstrating to them that they don't need to be feeling them by any of the above, any of the feelings, by any of the strategies that we're going to talk to you about today, then it is very important for you to notice how you're contributing to the cycle. So this is where we're going to start first, okay? Many times we hear parents dismiss emotions, and one of the ways that you can be dismissing emotions is by reassuring. When you're telling your child not to worry about something, you are actually telling them that their emotions don't matter. Showing them that their big emotions and their big behaviors are something that they shouldn't be paying attention to right now is absolutely ineffective at breaking out of this cycle. And it is a behavior that you need to be aware of and also work to cease, because your sensitive child is screaming at the top of their lungs, and nobody screams at the top of their lungs if they're not in pain. Now, what's very difficult in this dynamic is to trust that your child is in significant emotional pain, because another pattern that you might be stuck in is in assessing the problem with logic. If your child's emotional intensity doesn't match the logical need in the situation, like their brother took their toy, or there's no dessert before dinner, or you told them to turn off their screens and they're screaming like they're being murdered, then this obviously is a display of emotion that is not commiserate with the matter at hand, right? So there's an uneven emotional display, and this can be very frustrating for you as a parent, but it also can be very triggering, right? Dude, I just asked you to do a normal kid thing to do, a normal responsible person, child thing to do. And here you are yelling at me, berating me, cursing, throwing things. And these are not the values that I model in my home. So what is going on, right? And so it can be really tricky to hear from me as a consultant and expert here when I say that you're the one contributing to the dynamic, when you say, no, I'm not, Megan. I didn't teach my kid to curse. They picked this up from school, or they picked this up from TV. Well, I got to tell you, your child is suffering and they're struggling, and no child who has a solid foundation in their own sense of self and identity and self-concept will use that language for a long time, even if they've learned it or heard it from peers. Why? It's not because they fear getting in trouble, but because they know that they are not the type of person who uses that kind of language regularly. And that's an identity statement. That's an identity that your child holds. And so if your child's identity is flying in the wind or flapping in the wind and as wiggly as cooked spaghetti, then this is a problem that can be addressed through you and through the relationship with you as their parent. Okay, so I'm empowering you here to notice that is something that you can be more in control of with a different approach. So the next thing that needs to be shifted, and you might be falling into another trap, is the trap of judging or criticizing. You know, your sibling didn't think that this was that big of a deal, so why are you making it such a big deal? Or C, you know, your friends don't deal with this, don't yell and scream or don't make a big fuss about it, so why are you making a big fuss? Even words like "my kid threw a fit" is judgmental. Because your child isn't picking up a ball and chucking it like they're picking up feelings and they just chose the feelings and throwing them at you. Your child is out of control. They do not feel capable of not choosing to throw their emotions at you. They are missing a skill here. And so when even the language that you're using to describe their behavior has to be addressed and has to be shifted to support your child in feeling heard and understood. So the experience of criticism, whether that be through comparison or through judgment or by telling them that their problems are silly or that they're overreacting or they're being dramatic, this is really important. You know, we've heard parents affectionately use judgmental terms to describe their children. My little Sour Patch Kid. She's such a drama queen. I mean, you name it. We've heard it all. And in that dynamic, many children hear that and they start to characterize themselves as this identity. And if you are working on supporting your child and becoming resilient, which we'll talk about more later today, then you cannot be using language that affectionately holds their biggest challenge as part of their personality. And in fact, if you believe that, even professionals would do that, right? Strong-willed child, explosive child. What child in what home who is hearing from their parents or hearing from professionals that they are strong-willed or explosive or any ineffective label of the such is going to feel empowered to be anything different? Right? If you came to work and your boss affectionately called you pain in the neck, would you feel good about that? No. So then why are we debasing children and using that type of language in our own homes? We're doing that to protect ourselves, to protect our ego. We're using sarcasm to describe our personal experiences because we feel stuck. Okay? And when you're doing that, when humans use sarcasm to describe a sad experience, we do that as humans to make light of a very tragic and sad situation. Think about all the best comedians in the world. They've all come from, Robin Williams is a great example, rest in peace, come from tragedy in their own mental state. And they use humor to and self-deprecating humor to break out of it. Mitch Hedberg, same thing, right? And I'm not only picking suicidal comedians, but those are just the two that are really great examples. Excellent at their career and at their craft, and yet desperately struggling internally. And so when we look at this as adults in our own home, if we are struggling internally and externally in our own home, we can try to find humor as a strength, and you really need to be noticing how you're using deprecating humor. When you're describing your child, that sinks in. It's really important that you pay attention to that and that you stop using that behavior. This is a sign that you're struggling more than you think you are, and you're deflecting and you're trying to make light of that, and that will not solve the problem. When we help our clients break out of this pattern, we help our clients notice what type of humor can be helpful, right? Silly humor, empowering humor, goofy humor, right? I'm not telling you you can't live in a joyful home. In fact, quite the opposite. However, deprecating sarcastic humor only has its place for so long because it is very close to venting. And venting is ineffective, inappropriate, and a waste of time when you look at not only emotional management, but it's also, keeps you stuck in this problem. It is counterproductive to the emotional state of a healthy family dynamic. So when we look at one of the things that is important for you to be paying attention to, the other component to this, right, before we get into validation and the key components that we highlight for the work that we do, it is so important that you understand when you are misusing or misapplying the tactic of validation, because that's what it is. It's a tactic. It's not a strategy. It's an intervention when used effectively, but it is not a strategy. And the opposite of that would be to avoid or ignore, right? Obviously, we don't want you ignoring your child. And again, it goes back to the assumption of thinking that your child is doing this to get attention. They're doing this on purpose. They're engaging in these big explosive or implosive behaviors to get what they want. And so the natural other response to this, if you're not trying to actively try to fix your kids' feelings and get them to feel better, right, through reassurance, would be to ignore it. You know what? I'll talk to you when you're speaking to me like a 7-year-old. I'll talk to you when you're speaking to me with a respectful tone. When you act your age, I will let you consider going to the movies with your friends. So that type of language, ignoring, shutting down, being completely dismissive of your child's emotions, also perpetuates the behavior. And so it is important for your child to feel heard and understood and listened to. And it is just one part of solving the meltdown cycle and breaking out of it, because you can't listen forever, right? And I know you were just about to tell me that, right? Megan, wait a minute. Like, my kids' meltdowns last for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, a half an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. This is multiple times a day or multiple times a week. I don't have time for that. How can I be validating for this long? And this is the key piece that is missing in most advice for parents of sensitive children. Validate. Love your child. Let them spew their crap on you. Take it. This too shall pass. No, that is passive parenting. Absolutely not. That is not what I'm talking about when I'm saying validate. I'm not saying let your child emotionally vomit on you and just wipe it off with a smile on your face. That is not parenting. That is being a doormat. And that creates a lack of safety for your child as well. So let's make sure that we stay out of extremes, because being in an extreme is a sign of the survival mode that you are stuck in as a parent who's stuck in the meltdown cycle. And let's start looking at this for real. Okay, so what do I mean? The 3 key advantages to validation that we're going to cover today. And obviously this is a very dense topic. When we help our clients, we spend weeks on this to really get this right. And, so we're going to be focusing on this for the ripe amount of time of a podcast or a YouTube show, whatever, social media content you're churning through, and then the human attention span for free content, right? And so we're gonna be focusing on this in the broad strokes of this, okay? The first thing that you need to understand is that validation has more power than you think it does. Now, I just got done telling you that it's only one piece of the puzzle, so it is very important to understand it's highly impactful when used effectively, and just one component. Validation allows your child to feel heard and understood. It confirms to your child that their feelings and their experiences are okay to have, that they make sense. However, their behavior, we're not validating behavior when we validate, all right? Their behavior still needs to be worked on, right? And when you support your child in teasing out the difference between those two, your child shifts their behavior with your direction, right? They stop defending their behavior. And then once your child starts to learn about how they're feeling, they can start to become spontaneously empowered. And this is why, parents get so befuddled or confounded by the fact that we help parents break out of the meltdown cycle in as little as 8 weeks. Because when you apply these skills effectively in the right order, your child is much more capable than you are seeing right now. You know that, right? Because sometimes when you lecture, you say, "You're better than this. I know you can do this. I know you have this skill." Your child is spontaneously capable of solving their own problems. They need the space and the system from you to do that repeatedly. And so that's why, this is solvable swiftly, because when you have the capacity to teach your child how to break out of their own patterns without shame, they actually become much more creative in a faster manner. So back to validation, all right? Building trust is the next advantage, right? Your child doesn't feel safe in their own body when they are losing their mind. Go listen to any of my other shows where we talk about this. This is not that show. What we're talking about now is really anchoring into the fact that when your child feels like they can trust you, they then feel more safe in this scenario, and they start to settle in their emotional experiences. When they settle in their emotional experiences, they start to get creative. You cannot be creative when you're feeling unsafe or when you don't trust who you are bouncing ideas off of, right? Think about working with any professional, or even just trying to spitball or brainstorm with another professional, say a colleague at work, or somebody in the PTA, or somebody in your HOA, someone in your neighborhood you're trying to bounce ideas off of and collaborate, right? If you don't trust that person, you're probably not going to share your ideas with them, because you might be thinking that they're stupid, or you might be, not that other person, though you might also think and you might be judging that other person, which is a different story and a different characteristic. We're going to talk about this in a different place, right? When you're not feeling safe with that other person, you don't trust that they will take your vulnerability, your ideas. Brainstorming is throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, right? And so if you're brainstorming ideas to solve a problem in your neighborhood or at work or whatever, you want to be able to spitball those ideas with somebody who will let you throw some funny stuff at the wall and see what catches and what's a good idea, right? You have to be in a creative process, and the only way you can be in a creative process is to be in a trusting experience, in a trusting relationship. And this is true for your child as well. If your child can't trial and error some of their skills that they need to learn to manage their emotions, that is a key indicator that they don't feel safe. And highly sensitive children who are not generalizing their skills in multiple avenues of their life are not feeling safe in many of their communities, including the home base. All right. I know that this is hard to hear, and it's something that is critically empowering for you if you hear it with open ears, that this is something that you can change. You can shift out of this dynamic yourself as a parent when you focus on this in the right way. So I want to talk about this because this is important. When you're applying the validation scale effectively, this is perfect. I was just planning on recording the show today, and our client Kevin posted in our private client group, and I want to just read to you exactly what he said earlier this morning. Holy crow, this validation scale is really making a big difference. We've tried to validate before boot camp, but never with this kind of training on how. Twice today, our sensitive kid had big meltdowns, hitting his sister, crying, roaring, throwing things that turned out great. And I stopped and held him while validating how he felt. Holding emotionally is the word that he's using, sorry. Within seconds, he was telling me things that we could do to get some energy out, and even saying that meditation would also help. He even willingly put his own shoes on, let me brush his teeth, went to the store a few minutes after the first meltdown. All things that were on the top of our goals list. We have our clients write their goals down when they come into the program. We've seen some changes in the first 2 weeks with the mindset, but adding validation is like a whole different ball game. Okay? So when you apply intervention at an effective way, right? You can see it from our clients' mouths. Rapid shifts can happen. This family's been working on this for 2 weeks. And here we have a turnaround, right, for a client and a child who is now spontaneously coming up with their own solutions, all right, in the middle of a meltdown. Now listen, how many times have you heard from other professionals or other resources that you've tapped in? You know what, you just need to ride those meltdowns out and wait till your kids calm and then talk to them about what they can do next time. No. Meltdowns can decrease in duration and your child can become creative in the moment. That is absolutely something that your child can spontaneously do when you use an effective intervention and you do it well. And so if you're not using an intervention well, then it might be time for professional support. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, my kid won't take validation. Right? Because validation fosters emotional growth. This is number 3 in the terms of the advantages here. Because if your child doesn't want to hear your validation, it's not the validation that's not working. It's the way that you're applying the skill. And this is really important because if this is something that you need help with and you need support with, we're happy to support you with. But it is something that you need to be using regularly to learn and to apply, and your child will follow through with consistency and proper application. Your child needs to be able to identify their emotions. They need to be able to build insight. Validation helps them do that. And you teach your child that their emotions are okay. Your child who's highly sensitive, remember, 1 out of every 5 is highly sensitive. That means that your child sees 80% of the population and says, they're not like me. So you as a parent need to help your child notice, look, yeah, that's true. And doesn't mean you're broken. Doesn't mean you're fragile. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Doesn't mean that you have some sort of illness or diagnosis that requires you to characterize yourself as somebody who will never achieve emotional safety in the home, rapidly. With around age 4, 5, 6, 7, no matter how old you are, etc. And this is a message that your child needs to hear without shame, without blame, right? Playfully, as I talked about earlier. All of these are principles of what we teach our clients, and it is incredibly important. When you break out of this cycle and you do it effectively, you can see these positive and effective results quickly. So that perspective, your child who's highly sensitive is highly introspective, highly focused on how their emotions impact others. They might not be acting on it. They might not be showing you that, but by nature, they are processing things deeply because that is what the trait is all about. It's not a deep feeling process. It's a deep process. And this is one thing that many professionals who don't understand the trait effectively or as experts like we do here at MTC start to mischaracterize. They call it deeply feeling kids. They call it strong-willed. They call it spirited. None of that's based in research. It's all just big picture generalization. Yeah, I've seen kids like this before. I've seen their meltdowns before. Yeah, they feel really deep. Must be a deep feeling problem because I've seen this. No, if you studied it and you understand the research behind it, you recognize that this problem is actually a processing issue, especially when met with confusion and a skill gap. It's a processing concern with a skill gap then leads to the meltdown cycle. Then it's a completely different ballgame. You can't be just focusing on validation. You can't just be focusing on setting limits. You have to be working on more than that, and teaching coping skills, etc. And you have to be doing this from yourself as a parent, and it has to be broader than that for your child to experience the world from an empowering place. You need to be feeling empowered as a parent, and you need to be demonstrating and teaching them that they can rewire their own brains, and you can be the one to shift them out of that as well. This is one of the things that we teach our clients through our resilience rewiring protocol, trademark pending. And the focus here is noticing for your child that they have the capacity to manage their own emotional state. Because isn't that what you've been trying to teach them for all this time, right? Young children can learn that skill. They can tell you what they know helps. They can tell you what they want to do next time, and they can do it in the moment, right then and there, before your eyes. And if you want our support in figuring out if we can help you get there, then I encourage you to book a call with our team, because this is not a pattern that you have to live in for long. Okay? So here's how you do that. Go to meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk. That conversation is free. It will take about an hour. You will have a conversation with a team member where you will break down the patterns that you're dealing with. You will learn and look under the hood, get into the nitty gritty, talk about the really hard stuff, call yourself out on some patterns, and it will be a coaching session. This is not something that we'll be giving you free tips and tricks about. It is not something that will give you a neat little bow solution. If we are a fit, then we will share with you how that works once we discover what your goals are and you're willing to understand that those goals take work. If you're looking for a quick tip or a trick, it's probably not a fit, and we'll send you some resources and support you in figuring this out on your own, because DIYing is not something that we focus on. There are plenty of Pinterest channels, I'm sure, to address that. However, what we do here is highly specialized, and if we're a fit, then we tell you about that, and you can absolutely dive right in on the very same day, because why live suffering any longer than you have to, right? Again, happy to support you in that process and acknowledging that this takes work to turn it around. And if it's not a fit, or if we feel like your needs are stemming from something else, right? If your child is struggling with meltdowns due to significant chronic trauma, significant developmental needs that are not based in the highly sensitive meltdown cycle, then we will absolutely send you in a different direction, because it's critically important that our specialty remains our specialty, and we only serve a certain population stuck in the cycle. Okay, so happy to support you in figuring out if what we do is going to be the best fit, and if what you're doing in your home and your goals are fit for what we do as well. And that's on a conversation. Okay, so meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk. And if you are parenting a teen who is in high school or above, and at the time of this recording, it is now summertime. So if your teen is a rising high schooler, that's also relevant as well. For this link, meganthompsoncoaching.com/teen talk. All right, happy to speak with you, and our team members are ready to have that conversation with you and find what's going to be the best right fit